The sound was what broke me. Not a howl, not a growl, but the sickening thump of something heavy hitting the wooden porch just outside the cellar door. The air instantly went cold, smelling like wet earth and something metallic, something terribly wrong. I pressed my back against the damp stone wall of the root cellar, struggling to breathe, the ancient hinges above me rattling like a death knell. I had exactly 1 minute, maybe less, before whatever was out there realized I wasn't just another shadow. My entire world had narrowed down to this cramped, dark space, lit only by a faint shaft of moonlight filtering through a crack in the warped wood. I clutched the rusted shovel I'd found, a useless relic against a creature that moved with the speed of a striking viper and possessed the strength of a falling tree. Silence. A terrifying, absolute silence, far worse than the noise. It meant it was listening. It meant it knew I was here. My name is David. I'm 24 years old, or at least I was until 3 days ago when my age became irrelevant. I work in digital forensics, a job that usually involves staring at screens in temperature-controlled offices. This trip was supposed to be a week of disconnecting, a solo hiking and camping adventure deep in the Redwood National Park area, miles from civilization. I rented a remote, dilapidated cabin that promised isolation. I got it, and more. The first night was unsettling. There were noises, branch snaps that were too loud, and shadows that moved too quickly. I dismissed it as bears, or mountain lions, or simply my own overactive imagination fueled by isolation. The nightmare began properly on the second day, when I found the deer. It was ripped apart, not cleanly killed, but savagely mutilated about 200 yards from my cabin. The ground was churned, and deep, unnatural scratches marred the bark of an old oak nearby. I've seen animal kills before, this was different. This was performed with malevolent rage and staggering power. Later that evening, the air grew thick and heavy, and a low, distant thunder rumbled, though the sky was clear. I was chopping firewood when I saw it for the first time. It was maybe 70 feet away, standing upright near the edge of the dense pine line. It wasn't the shaggy, cartoon monster of B-movies. This thing was a biological atrocity. It was taller than any man, easily 7.5 feet, but unnaturally lean, almost skeletal in its frame. Its fur was patchy and matted, a sickening, dull white color, like bleached bone or old snow that had been dragged through mud. Its limbs were too long, its knuckles dragging the ground when it leaned forward. The most horrifying part was its face. The muzzle was elongated, but the jaw was too wide, lined with teeth that looked like shattered ceramic shards. Its eyes, the few times I glimpsed them in the fading light, weren't red or yellow. They were dull, milky white, lacking any visible pupil or iris, reflecting no light, suggesting only mindless, ancient predation. It was the absolute embodiment of fear, the white scary werewolf, utterly non-verbal, a machine of muscle and bone designed for one purpose, carnage. It didn't move. It just stood, watching me with those dead eyes as a cold rain began to fall. The primal terror that locked my muscles wasn't fear of being hurt, it was the realization that I was looking at something that should not exist in our reality, and I was its prey. I dropped the axe and stumbled back into the cabin, slamming the heavy wooden door and barring it with a thick beam I'd installed earlier for general peace of mind. I spent that night staring out the window, occasionally catching a glimpse of that pale shape moving in the pouring rain, silent, relentless, just outside the perimeter of the faint porch light. The rain turned into a blinding downpour by morning, making everything outside a slick, muddy misery. I had to leave. I knew it. But the creature hadn't left either. I saw its enormous, three-toed tracks pressed deep into the mud surrounding the cabin. It had walked circles around me all night. Around noon, desperation made me careless. I thought the downpour would keep it away, hidden under the canopy of the forest. I attempted to make a dash for my Jeep, which I'd parked 20 yards away. I got halfway there. The creature exploded from the gloom of the forest line, moving in a white blur, covering the distance faster than my brain could register. It wasn't running, it was gliding, a white specter of pure velocity. I didn't reach the Jeep. I hit the ground hard, scrambling back toward the cabin. I heard the dreadful sound of its claws scoring the metal door of the Jeep as it missed me by inches. The noise was like a screech of tortured metal, followed by the shattering of glass. It had destroyed my only exit in a fit of instant, casual violence. I retreated, locking myself back inside. It attacked the cabin then. The whole structure shuddered under the blows of its enormous fists. Wood splintered, the window in the living room exploded inward, and that metallic smell flooded the cabin. I hid behind the kitchen counter, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. It wasn't trying to break down the door, it was just toying with me, showing me the sheer futility of my barricades. It pulled back eventually, leaving behind a ruined Jeep and a damaged home, the rain washing away the evidence, but not the terror. My true entrapment began then. I had food for a week, but no way out. For the next day, I didn't move. I ate a can of beans and waited. The white monster returned when the sky was a bruised purple just before dawn, and this time, it was methodical. It didn't attack the cabin. It attacked my morale. I heard strange, wet, tearing noises coming from the woods, a high-pitched scream that ended abruptly. Then, silence again. I knew what it was doing. It was bringing its kill close, reminding me of its nature, its power. Then came the footsteps on the roof. Slow, heavy, measured. It was above me, a massive, predatory shadow, patiently waiting for me to panic, to make a mistake. The realization that this monster was intelligent, that it enjoyed the hunt and the psychological torment, was worse than its physical presence. It had me in its grasp, and it was tightening its grip. It was during the second full night of my confinement that I realized the small, old root cellar under the back porch might be my only chance. It was a secondary entrance, accessible through a barely visible wooden hatch hidden under a throw rug near the back door. The floor above me groaned. The beast was still up there. I had to move. I quietly slid the rug aside. The hatch resisted, it hadn't been opened in years. I used the dull point of my shovel to pry it up, wincing as the wood screeched in protest. I slipped down into the darkness just as I heard the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the creature descending the front porch steps, realizing my absence. I pulled the hatch shut from below, the weight of the beast already upon the main porch above me. The sound I heard at the very beginning, the sickening thump, was the monster landing directly on the cellar door. Now, I was here. Trapped. The wood above the main cellar door began to splinter. It was clawing, patiently, powerfully. I could hear the ripping, grinding sound of its enormous claws tearing through the 2 inches of old pine. I had maybe 10 minutes before it breached the outer layer. I looked around the dusty cellar. Old jars, dry soil, a few farming tools. Nothing useful. My eyes adjusted to the dark. I saw a small, rusted vent grate high up on the far wall, barely 6 inches wide, likely leading outside near the foundation. Too small for a man, too small for the beast. But as the air was torn above me and a sliver of the white fur of the white scary werewolf appeared through the first major tear, I scrambled toward the vent. I pulled at the rusty grate. It wouldn't budge. My fingers were slick with sweat. The splintering above grew louder, faster. The monster knew it had me. I could hear its ragged, heavy breathing. With a final, desperate burst of adrenaline, I slammed the head of the shovel against the grate. Once. Twice. The metal groaned. On the third strike, it tore loose, dropping onto the dirt floor. I looked out the small opening. It was dark, a patch of soaking wet grass, maybe 2 feet above ground level, blocked by a thick cluster of damp ferns. I heard the loud crack above me. The main bolt gave way. The cellar door was open. I threw the useless shovel aside. I wedged my head and shoulders into the vent hole, pushing with my feet against the stone wall. My chest was pinned. I couldn't move. The floor hatch opened with a loud whoosh of air and dust. I heard the beast land heavily in the center of the cellar. It let out a single, deep, non-vocalized sound, a guttural rumble of satisfaction that shook the ground. It had won. I felt a cold rush of air on my legs, and then a massive, hair-covered claw grabbed my ankle. The grip was instantaneous and absolute, like being clamped in a vice. The pressure was paralyzing. I screamed, the sound muffled in the dirt and the small tunnel. It wasn't pulling me out. It was just holding me, savoring the moment. I felt the sharp, dull edge of its claws pressing into the bone. The monster dragged my leg back an inch, and I could hear it inhaling, that awful, cold, metallic smell filling my nostrils one last time. Then, the beast decided to end the game. I felt the tearing, agonizing pain as it didn't just bite, it ripped, shearing bone and muscle. It wasn't a clean break. It was a brutal, shredding violence. My final, strangled scream was not one of fear, but of pure, white-hot agony. The world went black, not from death, but from the shock of the excruciating pain of the white scary werewolf finally claiming its prize. I was aware of the dark, the dirt in my mouth, the sound of tearing, and the final, crushing pressure on my life. The beast had won.